welcome back to the Director's Garage. I'm your host and resident idiot, Michael. I hope you guys are having a December to remember. That was really cliche. I'm sorry about that. Now, I have been in about 5 different states lately and more to come. I got to see actual snow. It's the first time in years. I miss it living in SoCal. And I froze my ass off in a remote part of Texas while shooting on the set of the Yellowstone spinoff 1883.
Bro.
Needless to say, boy, it's great to be back with you all. Now, it's not just about having the time to shoot and edit, but I like to do a lot of listening for these shows. And I haven't had any prep time to get that done lately. So I just don't want to slap together like some ordinary video just to put something out there. Well, all of this is my roundabout way of apologizing for the trickle of episodes lately. I don't like to trickle. No one does. Today we're doing a deep dive on all things Meze. All things Meze. I'm talking about the Empyrean and the Empyrean Elite. Now, I'm going to confess I'm something of a Meze slut. I like what they're doing at Meze, so much so that I've purchased 3 Meze products in the past year out of Director's Garage funds. The Empyrean, the Rye Solo, and the Empyrean Elite. Now, first of all, I'm a sucker for a comfortable headphone. I spend hours with these things on my head, and I prize comfort much higher than probably most other people do. I'm going to confess that up front, because if you're going to rape my ears, it better be worth it, because I got this pair over right here that is a joy to wear. Capiche?
Okay.
So let's kick this shootout off with ergonomics, because why not? Okay. These 2 headphones are virtually identical in every single way in terms of construction, except in one area, one critical area, and that's the thickness of the ear pads. Now check this out. The ear pad on the Empyrean is like maybe 30%, 40% thicker than the Elites. And it does make a difference. You notice it because my ears kind of maybe a little bit touch the lining on the outer shell, whereas with the thicker pads, they don't. It just feels overall more comfortable. Now, to be fair, these are still among the most comfortable headphones in existence, but yeah, I find these a little bit less comfortable, and that's a little bit shocking that they would sacrifice like that. Now, I did swap the pads from the Empyrean onto the Elite. Same size, so everything just fits, same shape, everything. And it does kind of Empyrean the sound a little bit. There's no change in detail. Definitely a change in size, though. You got to kind of let these things out a bit. But the bass does go a little bit more boomy. There's a little more presence down low. But it's a less immersive effect with the Empyrean pads on here. They do sound better with the shallower pad. But I love that I can get the Empyrean comfort back with just a 10-second change because these things are magnetic. Science, bitch. Did you get that reference? Comment below. Okay. One thing I want to say up front, if you buy either of these headphones, you're probably in for a pretty good time. I still enjoy the Empyrean despite its flaws. I like the tuning. I love the bass shelf. I love the comfort. So even if the technicals come up a little bit short, on their own, these things just sound and feel great. It's when you start comparing the two and going A-B between headphones that you start hearing some of what you're missing. You swap something out and you go, oh yeah, I can hear that and I can feel that. It just comes up a little bit short. So let's start breaking down where the metal hits the rail, and that's at the sound. And let's just state off the top, and I'm not going to surprise anyone by telling you, spoiler alert, that the Elite is a better sounding headphone than the original Empyrean. Like, if it weren't, Meze should just close shop because they're putting out a new product at $1,000 higher, and they sound worse? Yeah, no. I'm going to start this section with detail because this is one area where the OG Empyrean consistently lagged. It's got its butt kicked in any shootout I've ever done. And the detail with the Elite has been addressed in a major way. There is a whole bunch more detail going on all over the frequency spectrum. In the bass, for instance, I'm going to give you two examples. On Fleetwood Mac's Crystal, Mick Fleetwood's bass drum kind of just thuds in on the Empyrean. But on the Elite, there's a whole bunch more texture coming through. Like, you can pick up the resonance of the drum as the hammer hits the skin. Also, Blind Melon's No Rain. And be careful with this track, because there are some real shit masterings for sale of this recording. So you got to do a little bit of digging to find a good one. But if you do, it's worth the effort, because the texture on the bass guitar with the Elite is significant, whereas on the Empyrean, it's just, it's a solid low end with a bit of boom. I also think they've rolled the bass off slightly on the Elite. The original brings the bass a little bit hotter to the lowest regions. Now, they've tightened up the bass a bit, yeah, but that also adds to the perception that this headphone has a little bit more detail. So there is more detail going on. The Elite is not only faster, but then they pulled the bass back a little bit to kind of enhance this perception of bass tightness a little bit. And we're going to talk about this when we get into sound structure shortly. Now, up in the upper registers, I checked out Stevie Ray Vaughan's Couldn't Stand the Weather, and the snare hits with just tremendous authority and crispness and dynamic punch. Meze has done a lot of work cranking the detail up, and it's an audible improvement. All right, let's move on to imaging, because this is another area where I think the Meze didn't compete terribly well in that Mega Shootout. And now with the Elite, not only are the instruments better held in a specific location, but there's also more space between the instruments with the Meze Elite. And I also think that they help the soundstage too. The effect isn't quite as dramatic as the improvement as, say, speed and detail, but there is a sonic gain in both space and placement to my ears. Reverb effects seem to extend further outward. That said, these aren't the widest headphones I've ever heard, but they are wider, especially than, say, a headphone like the Focal Utopia. Dynamics. Now, this is another area where I think the Elite have stepped it up a bit with an asterisk. And the big difference is slam. The original Empyreans will out-slam the Elite. And I'm talking about that concussive, deep bass effect that seems to smack you in the back of the head. You give that sense of impact, like physical impact. The Empyrean does a better job at that, but the Elite does a better job with dynamics, like bursts of sound from quiet to loud. They come at you faster, and they're better able to surprise you with those hits and pops, even if they don't quite deliver the molar shaking thud of the original Empyrean. Okay, time to move on to sound structure. And you know, we're talking about bass, and we're talking about mids and treble, and yep, it's that order for me. I know, so dumb. Okay, I'm starting with the bass, and here's an area where the Empyrean holds an edge over the Elite. That is, if you're talking bass quantity. Yeah, the Empyrean will give you more bass presence. But for bass quality, the Elite hold more detail and less bloat. And that, to me, in this case, is a preferred place to be, at least for me. Now, admittedly, they don't slam with the impact and the authority of the original Empyrean. So you could push this category to the Empyrean from a certain perspective. Now, the mids, to me, are a massive upgrade on the Elite. Where things would get kind of jumbled up and confused if you send something complex through the Empyrean, the Elite do a much better job of keeping everything fast and clean. Now, there is a slight 1 to 2K peak that I hear on some country tunes that gives this headphone a little bit of a honk in the mids, but they are such an improvement over the Empyrean. It's a clear win for the Empyrean Elite. As for treble, well, I mean, first of all, we get more detail, and there's a lot more clarity happening up top. It makes for a much more enjoyable experience for me using the Elite. Now, I hate to use the V word, veil, but there is like a layer of gloss on top of everything with the Elite that just isn't there on the Empyrean. There's a little more sparkle up top, Now this is kind of obscure, but check out The Dawn by Asabisa. You hear triangles and animals with a huge boost in overall clarities. There are bongos off to the side, and bells and cowbells are more realistic and lifelike. It's a great track to check out. It just kind of fell into my title feed, to be honest. And that brings us to the music section, and today I'm going to talk about the most important singer since the year 2000. That's 20 years of music. Think about it while I set this up. Take a guess. Without this artist, there's no Adele, there's no Duffy, no Bruno Mars, no Meghan Trainor. And that's not to say that those artists would not have become famous or become known. They're great talents. They just would have sounded very different. Because pretty much every popular and unpopular artist has taken influence from today's featured artists. And I'm talking about Amy Winehouse. Amy, Freddie Mercury, Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, Frank Sinatra, Aretha, Luther Vandross, and Billie Holiday. These are the singers who I think changed everything that came after them. There's probably a few more. But Amy, in my opinion, is the most important of the modern era. What these artists have in common is that they heard music differently than anyone else. They were true originals. They found different on-ramps to melody that no one else heard. They found a way to make lyrics take on meanings greater than the words on the page. When you listen to their phrasing, where they put their emphasis, where they held the note, where they released the note, their cadence was specific and intentional and unique. They made choices that mattered, and they took the songs they were singing to greater places. Now, Amy's story is pure tragedy. For all her greatness, she only gave us 2 albums and a handful of cast-offs, yet her impact is still felt 10 years after her death. Like Freddie, Frank, and the others, her voice is ageless. She would have been successful in any era, in any genre. She was born to a family of jazz musicians, and she was introduced to Frank and Billy at a young age. When she'd get in trouble at school, instead of arguing, she'd sing "Fly Me to the Moon." And she buys her first guitar at the age of 14. Singing jazz standards around the clubs in London, she catches the ear of Simon Fuller in 2002. Now, A&R guys from EMI, Virgin, and Island Records are racing to sign her, because in an age where American Idol was churning out cookie-cutter stars, Amy's sound was unique. Her first album, Frank, gets released in 2003, goes platinum. Amy co-wrote every song. She was a little unhappy with Island's mixes of the material. She got a little vocal about it. It's largely a jazz collection with incredible hooks and phrasing. It's a better vocal effort than her more famous album, and the mix lets you better appreciate Amy's tone because the distortion in the vocals that was mixed into Back to Black is missing. Check out No Greater Love, which is a Billie Holiday number. It's reminiscent and evocative of Billie without being a direct lift. It really shows you her range, control, and the angles Amy took toward her singing. For her next effort, she turned to the sound of 60s girl groups for inspiration and redefined the Phil Spector sound for a new generation. Lyrically, it's fresh and at times brutal with its honesty. Rehab is the song that gets the most airplay, but a song like Tears Dry on Their Own is just gut-wrenching in its pain. Back to Black owned 2007, and Amy picked up just about every award there was to win, justifiably. It's a brilliant album in the way it weaves nostalgia with modern themes. Unfortunately, her success would do nothing but support a vicious addiction to alcohol. The tour in support of Back to Black was spotted with greatness, but often devolved into bouts of swearing at the audience, too wasted to remember her lyrics, and early finishes with the star stammering off stage. She simply lacked any control. The next album would never materialize. 2011 was supposed to be the target year, but Amy was trying to learn to play drums for the record, and she never really got started recording it. She spent most of her time after the success of Back to Black performing in one-off concerts and festivals and private gigs. But in the end, her addiction just swallowed her. She was found dead in her London flat on July 23rd, 2011, with a blood alcohol content of 0.416, more than 5 times the legal limit. One last album of recordings was released posthumously under the title Lioness. It's kind of some odds and ends tracks. And there have been spotted recordings that have surfaced over the years. BBC did a collection, but her story is very much like that of Janis Joplin or Jimi Hendrix. There's just so little material out there, but what's there shows such brilliance. All of them died at 27. There's an excellent documentary about Amy, though, that was released a few years back, and that's worth checking out. Now, there are singers out there who had better instruments. Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, and Adele come to mind. Perfect pitch, and their technical execution is unparalleled. And I certainly appreciate what all those singers can do with their voices. It's a joy to listen to. Technically, Amy just couldn't come close to that kind of ability, and she routinely abused her voice through cigarettes and drinking and bulimia. But it was Amy's ear that put her in that elite group of singers, that rarefied air of artists who could interpret a song in a way no one else could. She changed the way future artists would approach a song and the way it was sung. Listen to Adele and see if you can't hear the ghost of Amy in her voice. And check her out on the Empyrean Elite. It's a good time to revisit Amy's catalog. So, we're getting down to it. And the question is, are the Elite worth the trade-in of your old Empyrean? And my answer is, kind of.
Oh, man!
Look, they are an improvement across the board. There's no question there. But they're a little less comfortable, and they're a little tighter in the bass category, and maybe even a little less fun. They do, though, have better attention to accuracy and detail. Now, if detail was your hang-up with the old Empyrean, I'd say, yeah, go for the Elite, no question. But the Elite isn't exactly going to make you want to throw your current flagship out the window either. I don't think that this headphone hangs with the Uber cans in that $4,000 area, at least as far as sound. I would be all in with this headphone at, say, like $3,000. And I still appreciate the comfort of the original Empyrean and the fun factor of this headphone. It's still a great time. So if you have the Empyrean and you're kind of comfortable with what you got, I would say stay with what's making you happy. The Elite is an evolutionary product. It's a next gen. It doesn't cure all the flaws of the original Empyrean, but it does improve on them. And I still don't think that they're in the detail category of the LCD5 or the completeness category of the Sesfara, but they do hang near the top of the open back Uber headphone class. Love the comfort, love the sound, love the tone. Still a great experience. It's just technically short of where the very best headphones currently live. If Meze continues improving on this design, they may well get there. Until they do, they're just a little short of that Uber headphone turf. And they're priced up in that Uber headphone turf. Coming up, we have 2 blind What's in the Box episodes from both Linsoul and Audio 46. I have a sound check and a shootout of that Hi-Fi Man Aria Stealth Magnet Edition. That's the headphone that wowed me so much during that last episode. And we're going to do some comparisons and see where it sits next to the Hi-Fi Man Sesfara. That'd be a cool little comparison there. Now, we have a new flagship on the way here from overseas, I'm not so sure when that one's going to arrive. I bought it like a month ago. No idea. Lost in transit somewhere. And we have a sound check of the LCD5, which I'm really looking forward to. How much do I like them after spending some time with them? We're going to find that out. Now, there's lots ahead, so make sure you're subscribed to the Director's Garage so you don't miss a beat. And give this episode a thumbs up if you enjoyed the Empyrean Shootout, or do the other thing if you'd rather see me on a one-way SpaceX mission to Mars. I can't say I blame you either way, but I'll see you before you know it. Coming up, we have 2 blind What's in the Box episodes from both Out of Breath